Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Cricket Corner podcast with me, Vatsal Vora, as we look ahead to the second Ashes Test match between England and Australia, which will be played at Lord's from Wednesday, 28th of June. There has been a weekish gap between the first and the second Test match, and the first Test match obviously won by Australia as they have a 1-0 lead in the Ashes, won in a very close encounter by 2 wickets thanks to Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyon towards the end of day 5. There's a lot to talk about ahead of the second Test match between England and Australia, and a lot of that talking is coming from the England side of the camp rather than the Australian side of the camp, because the Aussies look completely fantastic right now. 2 wins on English conditions in a row now, which includes the World Test Championship final victory against India as well, and then winning the first Test match at Edgbaston. And yeah, so there has been a lot of chatter coming from the English side of camps. There has been a new addition to the Test squad as well. So let's obviously start talking about the second Test match. Let's start previewing the second Test match, by talking about England. So at the time of recording, England have not announced their playing 11 for the second Test match at Lord's, but there are expected to be a few changes here and there, or you never know. Ben Stokes is such a wily old character that he might not make any changes to the side, but I think there needs to be some sort of change because it's the first time that Bazball has failed against a proper Test playing nation. Like many expected England to blast their way to victory, but that has not happened, and traditional Test cricket has prevailed in the first Test match at least. So there's a lot of things to ponder as far as the English camp is concerned, and a lot of that has to do with the bowling department. I don't think the batting needs any changes whatsoever. Yes, Zach Crawley did not go well in the second innings, but he did score 60 odd runs in the first innings. So yeah, I think the batting looks kind of settled as far as the England is concerned, but there have been question marks surrounding the bowling side. Renan Ahmed, the youngster, the spinner, has been included in the squad. Will he replace Moeen Ali or not? Well, that's the kind of question. Do you want an 18, 19-year-old spinner to be thrown into the deep ends of the Ashes against arguably the finest Test batting lineup in the form of Australia, the likes of Head, Smith, Labuschagne, Warner, etc.? Do you expect Renan Ahmed to do well while facing against them? Well, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, that's one of the more interesting decisions which England have made. Now, does the inclusion of Rahman Ahmed, does that mean that he's just in place of Moeen Ali just to give him some cover, or do you expect Ahmed to play in place of Moeen Ali in the second Test match at Lord's? Because regardless of what the pitch is, and looking from the pictures online at least 2 days before the start of the Test match, the pitch looks kind of greenish. It has a greenish tint to it, so which may aid fast bowlers. Then do you then go with 4 quicks and Ben Stokes as your 5th bowling option, or do you stick with your tried and tested team composition of playing 3 quicks and a spinner along with Ben Stokes? That's another question. But if Ahmed is in the squad, does that mean that it's Moeen Ali who is going to be replaced? You brought Moeen Ali out of retirement just to play in the Ashes to replace the injured Jack Leach. And yes, he didn't have a large enough impact in the Edgbaston Test. He scored a few runs here and there. He got 3 wickets in total, 2 in the first innings, 1 in the second innings, 3 wickets, but he bowled a lot of overs, had blisters in his hand. Maybe it's just a precaution that Ahmed is in the squad, maybe just to see what Moeen's fitness is towards when the first Test match edges closer. It is what I mean. So maybe not, but if Moeen Ali is fit, I guess Moeen Ali still plays because he's still valuable when it comes to contribution with the bat, and having someone down there at number 7, number 8 who can come in and be a proper batting all-rounder is kind of kind of important as far as the English is concerned if their top order once again has a little fumble here and there, and it's a luxury to have someone like Moeen Ali coming all the way down at number 7. So if Moeen Ali is fit, I expect Moeen Ali to play, but then again, why is Rehan Ahmed in the squad then if you don't want him to play? There have been talks about how the pitch might aid fast bowling as always it does at Lords, so then it's a big question mark. But there needs to be some sort of bowling change as far as the English is concerned, because once again it was Broad and Robinson who did a lot of bowling, particularly in the second innings against Australia in the first test. But then do you then have the courtesy, do you then drop Anderson? Because Mark Wood is out there waiting in the wings, and many expected and many wanted, in fact, Mark Wood to contribute and play in the first test because the pitch was a flat road and it was completely aiding batting. And I heard a few people chattering on social media stating that if the pitch is not aiding fast bowlers, then why not play someone like Mark Wood who can at least harass and trouble the Australian batting order with his sheer pace, the extra pace which he brings. He can easily bowl at 145, 150 kilometers per hour constantly, and that is what you need sometimes when the pitch is not doing anything for fast bowlers. Some extra pace, doesn't matter what the pitch is, extra pace is going to trouble any kind of batting attack. So if you then decide to go with Mark Wood in your team, then who do you drop? Now that's one of the most difficult questions to answer at the moment. Do you drop James Anderson? But if the pictures on social media are correct and the pitch is going to be a green one, then you need James Anderson in those kind of conditions. But then his record in the first test wasn't good enough. I think a couple of days back he did say on one of the interviews that if the pitch continued to be like what it was at Edgbaston, then his Ashes is done. He cannot do anything. And that's something really worrying as far as an England fan is concerned, that James Anderson is completely giving up if the pitches are not aiding any fast bowling. But then those pitches kind of aid the Bazball scenario. So this is again a double-edged sword in a way. But then if you decide to drop James Anderson, then you can easily replace him with Mark Wood, and then you can have Ollie Robinson and Stuart Broad. Now in another circumstance, would you drop Ollie Robinson? I don't think so. I think Ollie Robinson did well with the ball. He did score 18 runs with the bat as well in the first innings. So he's kind of in a good position as far as his selection is concerned. 3 wickets in the first innings, 2 in the second innings, and he was looking really dangerous when I think he was the one who was kind of looking dangerous to pick up a wicket when Cummins and Lyon were going towards the victory towards the end of day 5 in the first test, along with Stuart Broad, that is. So I don't think you can drop Ollie Robinson. I think Stuart Broad had an incredible innings with the ball, incredible game with the ball, I should say. So you cannot think of Stuart Broad. I think out of Broad, Robinson and Anderson, I think Stuart Broad is someone who has completely nailed down his spot in the starting 11, in the playing 11 for the second test match. But then it's going to be a really close call between whom do you drop to fit in Mark Wood. Well, I'm talking about Mark Wood for quite some time now. There could be a circumstance that he might not get picked regardless of the conditions, regardless of the pitch at Lords, and England stick with Robinson, Anderson and Broad. But if you want some wickets on a pitch which is not aiding fast bowling, I think Mark Wood is your option, and he should certainly be considered in the second test match. If I'm an England captain, if I am Ben Stokes and I'm in a meeting with English management, I would personally drop James Anderson. Don't get me wrong, James Anderson is probably world's greatest fast bowler of all time, greatest swing bowler of all time, but then there needs to be a point where England start looking ahead of James Anderson. He's not going to give you another 2 or 3 years in international cricket. Maybe this is his final ever Ashes and he might hang his boots after the Ashes. So why not try and inculcate a new style of attack and trust Mark Wood? Mark Wood, he's no young as well. He's 28, 29 himself, approaching 30. So you cannot expect Mark Wood to give you many years ahead. But when he's fit, and his injury record has been dicey, but when he's fit, why not utilize him? So personally, if you ask me, I would continue with Moeen Ali, because it's just been one test match, and if his fingers healed, he's recovered, he's back, I expect Moeen Ali to be there instead of Rehan Ahmed. And I will personally go with Stuart Broad, Mark Wood, and Ollie Robinson for the second test match at Lords. So yeah, that was the bowling department, and I think from what you heard already, it's quite difficult for an outsider like me to predict the English bowling unit, but due to all the permutations and combinations. But yeah, there I go. I think I'll go with Broad, Wood, and Robinson. But I think I mentioned this towards the earlier stages of this podcast, that England's batting looks quite decent and they don't need to crop and change. Johnny Bairstow is an interesting one though. Johnny Bairstow scored 70 odd runs in the first innings, so he seems to be back with the bat where he belongs. That is the form which he had prior to that injury. He was just outstanding. So there is no doubt Johnny Bairstow is one of England's best batsmen, but the question marks surrounding his performance came up with the gloves. He had so many is not a right word. I think he had a few dropped catches. He was a bit fumbly behind the stumps, and those errors kind of brought up the question of Ben Foakes again. Now, Ben Foakes is not in the squad, so I don't see him all of a sudden being inculcated in the squad, and you see him with the gloves, with those wonderful black gloves behind the stumps at Lords on Wednesday. I don't see that happening, but I think Johnny Bairstow's wicket keeping is a little dicey. He might be rusty here and there. Don't get me wrong. He's a capable wicket keeper. He's kept wickets throughout his career, be it with Yorkshire, with England in the limited overs format, or with the test format. He's kept wickets in the IPL as well. So I think he's a sound wicket keeper, and it's just rustiness which has been causing those errors. So I personally wouldn't look into Johnny Bairstow's wicket keeping a lot, but I think it is his batting which is going to keep him in the side, because let's be honest, having someone like Johnny Bairstow coming in at number 5, number 6 is such a luxury as far as the English is concerned, England side is concerned. They have such a stacked middle order which relies heavily on Joe Root and Harry Brook, but even if one of those has an off game here and there, then you still have the likes of Stokes and Bairstow coming in towards that middle lower order who can contribute with the bat. So there have been question marks on Johnny Bairstow's wicket keeping. I think his keeping is going to be under scrutiny, under microscope, when the Lord's Test match eventually starts on Wednesday. But for the time being, I think he's well within his rights to keep his place in the starting 11, and let's see if he has a better game or not. Once again, if he has another dicey game, fumbly game behind the stumps, then there would be question marks, because then the England squad might decide to bring Ben Foakes back, but I think that's looking too much into the future, I guess. For the time being, I think Johnny Bairstow stays in the team and he would keep wickets. So if I'm someone from the England management and I had to pick my playing 11 for the second test match in Lords, the team would be as follows: Duckett and Crowley to open. Then I'll have Ollie Pope, Joe Root, Harry Brook, Ben Stokes, Johnny Bairstow, Moeen Ali, if his finger is fine and he is capable of bowling 40-50 odd overs in the test match. If not, then I'll have Ahmed in just to have a spinning option. Or then I'll have Mark Wood, Stuart Broad, and Ollie Robinson to round off the playing 11. So yeah, that's the England side of the things. But let's talk about Australia for a moment as well. I don't see Australia having a single change, and if there is a change, I think there will be a change in bowling. But Australia looks so sound. They are completely perfect at the moment. Their key team composition is to the T, and it's absolutely perfect as things look from the outside, at least. The only change which the Australian side can make is they can re-include or reintroduce Stuart. Oh, I was saying Stuart Broad. No, they can reintroduce Mitchell Stark in the playing 11, and that could be the only change as far as the Australian side is concerned. Maybe in place of Scott Boland, because I think Josh Hazelwood had a really good game in the grand scheme of things in the first test match. Yes, he picked up just 3 wickets, 2 in the first innings and 1 in the second innings, but he looked fit. I think Ricky Ponting said in the commentary box that this is the leanest and the fittest he has ever seen Josh Hazelwood, and I kind of agree with Ricky himself, because Josh Hazelwood looked really good. He was coming in, bowling good line and length. He was very active in the field as well. So I don't see Australia dropping Josh Hazelwood, particularly after he didn't play the World Test Championship final. So out of all the fast bowling options, it's Josh Hazelwood who's got a rest in the World Test Championship final, and the Edgbaston Test was his first Test match on this tour. Mitchell Stark, on the other hand, if he's fit and if Australia needs some X factor or some other bowling option, then they should probably go with Stark, because he does offer you a left arm option which is not available in the current Australian setup, because Cameron Green, Scott Boland, Pat Cummins and Josh Hazelwood are all right-handed. So if you need something extra, you need an X factor, you need something different, then you can pick Mitchell Stark. He's pretty handy with the bat as well, but so is Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyon, in fact. So if you do include Mitchell Stark, then he could give you another option and could extend your batting in a way as well. But will it be fair on Scott Boland though? Now that's the question which has just popped up in my head right now. Yeah, Scott Boland did have a great World Test Championship final, and he deserved his place in the first Test match at Edgbaston. Don't get me wrong, let's get that out of the way. But at Edgbaston, he picked up just 2 wickets, 1 wicket in each innings. It does kind of look bad if you are Scott Boland, but then again, he has been a wonderful servant for Australian Test side ever since he made his debut in the last Ashes. Do you give him a second opportunity? I kind of see Pat Cummins giving him a second opportunity, but then again, if the pitch, it all comes back to the pitch talk, which I talked about earlier in this podcast while discussing Anderson or Mark Wood. If the pitch is aiding a little bit of swing and the conditions look good, I think having a swinging option in the form of Mitchell Stark, who can give you the left arm option as well, is kind of the way to go forward. So if I am Pat Cummins and if I am part of the Australian management, I would personally go with Mitchell Stark in place of Scott Boland, but that's just a personal opinion. And as a cricket fan myself, I really want to see Stark, Hazelwood and Cummins bowling together and hunting in a trio as far as the Australians are concerned. So yeah, that's the Australian side of things. That's not a lot to talk about as far as the Australians are concerned, because they had a perfect game at Edgbaston, and they are coming into the Lord's Test match on the back of 2 victories on this English tour now. So there aren't many reasons why Australia need a change in their team, because everyone seems to be contributing here and there. You get a cameo of 30 from Cameron Green, you get a couple of wickets from him, so he's doing his job. Alex Carey looked good in the Edgbaston Test as well. Steve Smith kind of had a dicey game, but then again, he's Steve Smith and he's batting in English conditions, so you cannot keep him out for long. David Warner, well, I see him getting an opportunity as well. So if I had to predict the Australian lineup, I think it's one of the most easiest things to do at the moment, and any Tom, Dick and Harry can do that. But yeah, if you are interested in knowing my predicted Australian lineup, I'll personally go with Khwaja and Warner to open, Marnus Labuschagne at 3, Steve Smith at 4, then you have Travis Head at 5, Cameron Green at 6, Alex Carey at 7, Pat Cummins, Nathan Lyon, Mitchell Stark and Josh Hazelwood will round up the Australian playing 11 as far as the Lord's Test is concerned. Now, let's quickly talk about this grand scheme of things, the scenario surrounding the second test match at Lords. Everyone expected England to play their attacking style of play, and they did not disappoint in that regard. They had a blistering start to the innings on the day one in the first test. They did have a sudden declaration, which many expect Ben Stokes to do from time to time. There were reverse scoops, there was quick play, there was just incredible total Bazball scenario at Edgbaston. But then again, they did come up on the losing side. Now this is going to be a massive game as far as the England side is concerned. I previously talked regarding this same on the first test match review episode, and I did say that the Lord's test match, the second test match, is going to be absolutely crucial as far as England is concerned, because let's say if something happens and something terrible happens, the things go south and England suffer yet another defeat whilst playing in their aggressive Bazball kind of gameplay. Let's say Australia come out of Lords with a 2-0 lead. Basically, England need to win the rest 3 test matches. Not saying that's not possible, but that would be super pressure as far as the English is concerned. So I think England need to find a balance between their aggressive kind of cricket and some logical kind of cricket. I'm not saying Bazball is illogical, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of how England play cricket, and I believe that that's the way forward as far as test cricket is concerned. But then again, there has to be a balance, because I think the pressure is firmly on England at this point, because Australia basically have told England that you need 3 wins at least in the next 4 test matches. And with the first victory at Edgbaston, which is considered a fortress, don't get me wrong, in English cricket, Australia have come up with a 1-0 lead. And if that's the scenario, I think Australia are under no sorts of pressure. They'll go out there and they'll play their normal kind of cricket. And it's all, I think all the trial and error kind of things will have to take place from the English side of things, because they are the ones who are currently under pressure. And if there is an odd day here and there and the pressure does come back on English shoulders, I think it is going to be really, really difficult, because England basically need this. It's not a must-win game. You can still have a draw or a defeat, and you can still have a chance of winning and regaining the Ashes. But then again, winning 3 test matches in a row is kind of difficult. But so England basically need a win here to get that pressure off their back in a way. 1-1 after 2 test matches is kind of a right scenario. You can expect that to happen from time to time, but then 2-0 after 2 test matches is going to be really difficult to come back from. So England need to be really cautious in the style of play, in the team they select and whatnot. But then again, Ben Stokes has said that he's not going to change his approach after just 1 test match, and I don't see why they should. I did talk about this earlier as well, that it was kind of a narrow defeat. The game could have gone either way, and it unfortunately for England, it did not go their side. But then again, that's how test cricket rolls. It's a throw of a dice sometimes, and sometimes if it doesn't land even, if it lands odd, then you are in trouble. So yeah, a lot to ponder as far as the England side is concerned. And that's the reason why I'm kind of worried for England, because I know for a fact that they are not going to change their approach in any stretch of imagination. They're going to continue playing that aggressive style of test cricket. But then where will that aggressive style of cricket lead to in the second test match at Lords? Because Lords is kind of their place. They have a good record. They want to do well at Lords. So all that will put extra pressure on their shoulders. And with the series already 1-0 in Australia's favour, I think this particular test match could be the making of in an incredible Ashes series in the coming few weeks. But yeah, that's the preview done for the second test match at Lords, which begins on the 28th of June at Lords, obviously. Yeah. My personal predictions, well, I'm completely on the fence right now, but if I had to predict a winner, I would personally go with England. I think the pressure's on, but when the English side, particularly under Stokes, when they are under pressure, they kind of dig deep and come back stronger. So I expect them to come out there and get the win. But then again, it's a 5-day marathon, and you never know what the scenario would be come Saturday evening, Sunday morning. So yeah, that's the preview done. I hope you guys liked what I talked about regarding England and Australia. If you liked what I'm talking about, make sure you give me 5-star ratings on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Make sure you're liking, sharing, and subscribing on YouTube. But for the time being, this is me, Vatsal Vora, signing off. Ciao for now.